Incredible turnaround. 30 minutes after Bullies struck, an amazing girl stood up and fought back. Lily Johnson pressed her back against the bathroom stall, heart racing in her chest like a caged bird desperate for freedom. Just half an hour ago, laughter had echoed through the cafeteria, dull and mocking, as her classmates ripped her apart with their words. A scribbled note, Lily the loser, had been shoved onto her tray. Her friends were silent, eyes averted, the air thick with unease. How could everything turn so cruel, so fast? They didn't understand how deeply those words cut. She was not just a target but a girl who loved animals and dreamed of a brighter future. The sting of that humiliation was unrelenting, and now isolation enveloped her like a heavy cloak. Back home, she clung to her mother. "Don't let them define you," her mother said, voice calming yet firm, emphasizing family loyalty like a mantra against the cruelty of the outside world. But as Lily absorbed those words, an unsettling tension coiled within her mind. Could she really rise above, or was hiding from the world her only option? Just beyond the safety of the four walls were the whispers and sneers that echoed louder than any kindness her mother could offer. Driven by desperation, Lily found herself digging deeper into animal welfare research, desperate for escape, but her thoughts churned. On one hand, the resolute part of her yearned to grow stronger and find her voice, but the other part felt the pull of bitterness, urging her to retreat to the familiarity of silence instead. With her English teacher encouraging her, she began penning articles for the school newspaper, layering her words with raw emotion about empathy and understanding. And yet, what good would that do? What if nobody cared? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days stretched on, the bullying intensified. Every whisper in the hallway made her flinch, every sideways glance felt like a dagger to her spirit. That familiar pit in her stomach twisted with anxiety. Everyone said she was strong, that she could handle it. But as the burrowing voices grew louder, doubt seeped in like poison. Could she really confront those who tormented her? Suddenly, the weight of it all felt unbearable, a crushing reality pressing down on her as she sat at her desk, fingers poised mid-type, thoughts racing through her mind. Waves of despair crescendoed when she thought of standing before all her peers during the assembly, every mocking face turned toward her, dissecting her every word. But what if she spoke and they just laughed? What if the girl who orchestrated the pain stood right in the back, smirking at her weakness? Everything within her screamed to run, but another voice whispered a determination she didn't know she harbored. As she locked eyes with her reflection in the mirror, a flicker of hope ignited against the shadows of doubt. Would she have the courage to rise above it all, facing down not just her bullies but the fear that held her captive? Tension anchored her to the ground, each breath an agonizing reminder of the choice before her, a choice to either embrace her tumultuous journey or shrink back into the silence once more. And there, suspended in that moment, her heart raced, leaving the future uncertain, armed with the knowledge that the outcome would shift everything forever. In the following days, a quiet storm brewed inside Lily. Each morning brought renewed dread, but also something more, a growing undercurrent of defiance. She retained her distance from the stream of jeers and taunts, finding solace in her articles. The papers became a canvas through which she could channel her pain. With every writer's block she conquered, she built confidence. Yet, the shadow of doubt clung to her, whispering that maybe, just maybe, she was still that timid girl hiding behind the bathroom stall. One afternoon, as she sifted through online videos about public speaking, she stumbled upon a talk by a woman who had faced relentless bullying. The speaker's voice was charged with conviction, recounting her own struggles in an inspiring way. As she listened, Lily sat on her bedroom floor, enraptured. This woman didn't just survive, she thrived, finding strength in vulnerability. A flicker of possibility roared to life in Lily's chest. What if she could be that person, Too motivated, Lily hatched a plan to practice public speaking. She began rehearsing her speeches in the mirror, treating the reflection as her audience. Each session was a mix of raw emotions and fading fears. She envisioned standing at the podium, letting her voice resonate through the auditorium, stating her truths with unapologetic clarity. Yet with each rehearsal came harsher fragments of self-doubt. Would her voice shake? Would the judgmental eyes still linger, waiting for her to falter? The next week, she cautiously approached her English teacher after class. "I think I want to talk during the assembly," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper, yet loud enough for hope to break through. Her teacher's face lit up with support, urging Lily to share her thoughts on kindness and respect. In that moment, surrounded by the ever-supportive classroom walls, something shifted. Days flowed into each other, transforming into an uncharted territory of resilience. With each public speaking rehearsal, she discovered parts of herself previously hidden. She wanted to connect with her peers, share her struggle, and, above all, evoke empathy. But even as she honed her narrative, a gnawing anxiety punctured her determination. The closer the assembly approached, the more she worried about those who had hurt her. Would they laugh? Would they hurt her again? On the night before the assembly, Lily ran the speech through in her mind, picturing every angle of the auditorium, imagining how it would feel to stand on that stage. But a small voice reminded her of her fears, tossing endless uncertainties into the air. What if it all went wrong? Her breath quickened as she lay in bed, her mind racing, two worlds colliding, one filled with trepidation, one bursting with potential. She closed her eyes, and as shadows danced behind her eyelids, a crucial realization settled over her. She didn't need to be perfect, she only needed to be true to herself and to her story. The next day would mark a significant turn in her journey, irrespective of the outcome. As dawn broke, she sat in front of her mirror, ready to channel every aspect of her development: the fear, the resolve, the scars, and the triumphs. With determination swelling, she solidified her final thoughts into a single belief: her voice mattered. Suddenly, the thought struck her: what if, during the assembly, she encountered the very girl who had orchestrated much of her pain? Would she collapse or stand firm? The time had come to face not only her audience but the very fears that had held her captive for so long. Lily arrived at school with a mix of anticipation and dread coiling in her stomach. The morning light spilled through the hallway windows, illuminating the faces of her peers as they buzzed with excitement and anxiety in equal measure. For them, this assembly was just another event to endure. For her, it was a defining moment, a double-edged sword swinging between vulnerability and strength. As the bell rang, announcing the start of the assembly, she felt the familiar tremor of intimidation grip her. Yet, underneath the trepidation was a fire. She recalled the speaker from the video, how she had transformed her pain into power. It stirred something in Lily, a fervent desire to share her story and to reclaim her space. She resolved to step into the limelight, to shed the shadows that enshrouded her. When her name was finally called, her heart leaped into her throat. Each step toward the microphone felt monumental. The auditorium buzzed with chatter, but as she reached the podium, an explicit silence fell. The eyes on her burned with varied emotions: curiosity, skepticism, and perhaps a few remnants of disdain. But within that gaze, she discovered a flicker of understanding, or at least the potential for it. Hi," she began, her voice wavering slightly, but she pressed on, drawing strength from the truths she had rehearsed. "I want to talk about kindness." With every word that flowed, she poured out her heart, threading through the tapestry of her experiences the isolation, the sting of ridicule, and the quiet agony of feeling invisible. As the speech progressed, the room shifted. Her vulnerability broke the surface tension. Lily began to identify potential in her own narrative, realizing it wasn't just a recounting of hurt, but an invitation to others to reflect and connect. She glanced at the back of the auditorium, where that girl, the orchestrator of her pain, sat. No longer someone to fear, but rather a pivotal element in her transformation. This was not about retribution, it was about her own liberation. "I am not defined by what they say," she declared, her voice steadier now. "I decide who I am." The power of conviction resonated through her words, light rippled in her chest as she spoke truths that had long been shackled within. She could see a few students edging forward, their expressions shifting from mockery to contemplation. Some were even nodding, perhaps awakening remnants of sincerity buried beneath their bravado. As she concluded her speech, a wave of liberation washed over her. The applause erupted, a chorus of unexpected support enveloping her. But even as she stepped away from the podium, the gnawing anxiety lingered. What would happen next? Would she be vulnerable again, exposed to mockery as she had been in the past? She had told her truth, but it remained a lean balancing act on a precarious edge. After the assembly, she retreated to a quieter nook in the school, her heart racing, still riding the adrenaline of her performance. Faces filled with approval mixed with deep-rooted fears, she could sense the potential volatility of this moment. As she reflected, thoughts began to crystallize. This was just the beginning. Just then, her English teacher approached, a proud smile painted across her face. "You did brilliantly," she said, affirmation echoing in Lily's ears. But before she could fully bask in this success, someone caught her eye from the crowd. The girl who had bullied her stepped forward, hesitation cloaked in a veneer of confrontational bravado. "What was that about?" she questioned, her tone challenging yet laced with an uncertainty Lily had never noticed before. The edge of confrontation hovered in the air, charged with energy. Lily's heart raced as she met her gaze, preparing to confront a shadow that had haunted her for so long. This was no longer just a performance, this was real life, raw and unpredictable. Would Lily crumble under the weight of past pain, or could she wield newfound strength to redefine her narrative? Lily's breath caught in her throat as she faced the girl who once wielded her words like daggers. Unsure of her footing, she felt a sudden surge of adrenaline, a clash between fear and defiance thrumming through her veins. Why had this moment become so immediate, so crucial? What was that about? The girl repeated, a hint of something softer trembling beneath the bravado. Lily's mind raced. This was the moment she had envisioned, the opportunity to reclaim her story. The stakes were higher now, it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about healing, for herself and possibly for this girl too. It was about kindness, Lily answered, her voice steadier than she felt. It was about being brave enough to be yourself, and not letting anyone tell you who you should or shouldn't be. She saw the girl shift slightly, the defiance in her posture flickering as if caught off guard by Lily's words. For a moment, there was a flicker of understanding in her eyes, an acknowledgement of something unspoken. "What do you mean?" There was curiosity now, peeling away the layers of hostility. "I mean," Lily replied, searching for the right words, "that we all go through things. Maybe if we talked instead of throwing insults, we'd see each other differently." Her heart pounded. Was she really proposing a dialogue with her bully? The very notion filled her with both fear and exhilaration. What if this was the turning point, not just for her, but for both of them? For the first time, the girl's facade began to crack, and Lily saw a glimpse beneath the armor of contempt. I didn't think anyone would talk back. You're not supposed to be a victim." Lily interrupted. "I'm not a victim. I'm still discovering who I am. Just like you." The girl's expression morphed, wrestling with uncertainty. "You? Discovering? Seriously? You've stood up there and told them everything?" "Yes," Lily affirmed, the warmth of conviction cascading through her words. "And I don't regret it, no matter the outcome. What I experienced made me who I am today, but it doesn't define me. It shaped me." There was silence between them, heavy yet charged with potential. Lily realized, right then, that her words had created an opening not just for herself but perhaps for this girl to explore her own defenses. "Do you think you can really change?" the girl asked, almost pleadingly. "I hope so," Lily replied, vulnerability threading through her voice. "I can't say for sure. But I have to try." Each second felt like an eternity as they stood locked in a new form of engagement. For the first time, Lily could see the fears mirrored in the other girl's eyes, the weight of insecurity she had never acknowledged simply because it was masked by cruelty. "What if I want to change too?" she blurted, raw honesty leaking through her bravado. Lily's heart raced, a surge of empathy washing over her. "Then we have to talk about how we can make things better. For ourselves and the people around us." The bell rang, echoing ominously in the corridor, a reminder of reality creeping back. Both girls hesitated, looking at one another not as opposites, but as imperfect reflections poised on the verge of transformation. Suddenly, Lily felt a sense of urgency, a new plan unfurling in her mind. "Let us not stop here. This can't just end with a conversation. We need to do something about it. Together." What would it mean to partner with her former bully? How could this spark of vulnerability ignite a true change in their environment? With that thought, Lily realized she stood on the precipice of something unforeseen. She needed to prepare for whatever came next and how to cultivate this unexpected alliance. The path forward loomed before her, uncharted and exhilarating. "You'll think about it?" she asked, her voice both tentative and resolute. "I will," the girl replied, a flicker of something hopeful dancing in her gaze. As they parted ways, a new tension gripped Lily, not fear of the past but the precipice of potential. She felt something shift within, the true confrontation lay ahead, not just with her former bully but also with the battle of her own fears and aspirations. She stepped into the hallway, where the corridor thrummed with the energy of uncertainty and possibility. What kind of change could come if they banded together? Determination surged within her, a dawning realization settling in. This was just the beginning of a deeper journey, one that promised both challenge and discovery. But as Lily walked away from the confrontation, it was not just her past that haunted her now, it was the whispers of what lay ahead, the unraveling paths that beckoned her to redefine who she could really become. Would she find strength in unity or falter when the stakes rose higher? As Lily navigated through the thrumming hallway, the gravity of her decision pressed against her chest. Each step felt both liberating and perilous. The encounter had sparked an idea, an unexpected collaboration that could possibly turn the tide of animosity into something constructive. Yet, the enormity of what lay ahead gnawed at her, igniting doubt that threatened to eclipse her newfound resolve. She settled into her first class, the teacher's voice fading into background noise as thoughts spiraled around the concept of partnership. How could she approach this girl, her former tormentor, to forge a path that bridged their divide? What would it mean to truly work together in a world where their individual histories were stained with conflict? The classroom buzzed with energy, yet she felt disconnected, as if she were observing from a vantage point above it all. Lily's mind raced with strategies, pondering how she could frame their conversations. They could support each other, maybe even organize discussions or workshops somewhere they could share their experiences and invite others into the dialogue. Yet beneath her hopes lay an undercurrent of fear. What would happen if it faltered? What if the experience reignited bitterness instead of healing? After class, she lingered, feeling a tingle of anxiety entwined with a flicker of ambition. She hesitated before her former bully's locker, remembering the anger that had clouded her emotions for so long. But now, with the promise of change before her, Lily recognized that her voice held power. "This is about more than confronting fear," she muttered to herself, "it's about building something new." Finally, she pushed forward, thoughts racing and pulse quickening. She texted the girl, suggesting a meet-up at their favorite cafe, neutral territory, where they could talk discreetly without the pressures of their peers hovering nearby. Simultaneously, nerves churned within her. What if the girl reverted to her previous self, defensively lashing out the moment doubt crept in? As the hours ticked by, Lily rehearsed their potential dialogues in her head. She wanted to frame the discussions with compassion, but she wasn't naive enough to overlook the rocky terrain ahead. What if they approached it as collaborators rather than adversaries? Could they share the burden of past mistakes while forging a new agreement? In that moment, she realized she wasn't just seeking change, she was actively partaking in a transformation that demanded authenticity from both sides. Arriving at the cafe, a familiar sense of apprehension settled over her like a cloud. She scanned the room, trying to project calm while her heart beat rapidly. The thought of seeing the girl again stirred her stomach in knots. What if she was not prepared for the depths this exchange would reach? When the girl entered, her usual bravado seemed muted by uncertainty. The way she hesitated at the door reminded Lily that vulnerability was a shared experience, one they could both navigate. Fearfully, they exchanged glances before the girl approached, visibly wrestling with internal conflict. "Thanks for coming," the girl said, her voice softer than Lily had anticipated. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," Lily replied, choosing her words carefully. "I know this isn't easy for either of us." They settled into a booth, the noise around them dimmed by the gravity of their intentions. As they began to speak, fear and anxiety transformed into an electric exchange, raw honesty spilling forth from both sides as they slowly peeled away their defenses. Lily felt the weight of the conversation deepening, a profound awareness dawning that their individual journeys were not dissimilar. Both struggled with identity, perception, and the desire to be understood. With every passing moment, she watched as this girl, once an antagonist molded by her insecurities, began to unveil layers that had once felt impenetrable. Lily realized then that she was not merely reclaiming her narrative, she was participating in a larger story that could reshape the perceptions of those around them. The air buzzed with palpable levity as each shared experience fostered a sense of camaraderie, transforming the old wounds into fuel for their new purpose. But just as hope surged within her, a nagging thought emerged: would they be able to sustain this newfound bond under scrutiny? With the external expectations and judgments of their peers ever present, how would they hold on to this momentum they had generated together? As Lily looked into her newfound partner's eyes, she sensed a similar flicker of uncertainty and resolve. The next step lay clearer before them, they could choose to leap into uncharted territory together. With every challenge that came their way, they would need to confront myriad perceptions that threatened to derail their efforts. "Are you ready for this?" Lily ventured cautiously, her heart pounding against her ribcage, aware that this moment could redefine everything. "I think we have to be," the girl replied, determination echoing in her voice, and with that, they both understood that the real work was only just beginning. Would they prove resilient enough to overcome not just their pasts, but the skepticism of others who would doubt their transformation? The stakes had just risen significantly, and the time had come to turn their fragile alliance into something formidable. The days that followed their first meeting buzzed with quiet anticipation. Lily knew the momentum they had created needed nurturing, a flame ignited could easily flicker out without care. Both she and the girl, whose name was now taking on a surprising familiarity, Tessa, had ventured beyond the veils of their former roles. The conversation had sparked their commitment, but they faced a delicate reality outside that booth. Determined to take action, Lily began to sketch out a plan. She didn't merely aim to confront bullies, she wanted to cultivate empathy among their peers. The idea of founded dialogue sessions struck her as an anchor, a safe space for students to discuss their experiences without fear of ridicule. Writing on a notepad, she felt a surge of empowerment as she jotted down potential topics, themes around vulnerability and acceptance, underlining each with a flourish. However, self-doubt crept in as she considered logistics. As skilled as she felt in laying out the framework for their vision, the thought of presenting it to Tessa raised concerns. What if Tessa shied away from the spotlight? The fear of stepping back into an adversarial role haunted Lily. She took a moment, breathing deeply to steady herself. "This is collaborative," she reminded herself. "It's not on you alone." On a chilly Thursday afternoon, they reconvened at the cafe, now a hub of collaborative energy. The chatter of students mingled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee, creating a surprisingly invigorating atmosphere for what lay ahead. Tessa arrived, an air of steely determination masking her earlier doubts. They quickly slipped into their booth, the familiarity from their previous exchange setting a tone of mutual respect. "Okay," Lily began, excitement creeping into her voice, "I've been thinking about ideas for our sessions. I know we can make something important happen here." She revealed her scribbles, nervously pushing the paper toward Tessa. As Tessa scanned the topics, her brows knitted in concentration before she looked up, enthusiasm flickering in her eyes. "This is great, Lily. But, what if we also invite someone to speak?" Someone who's been bullied or has experienced something significant. That could add depth. A thrill shot through Lily, the suggestion ignited an array of possibilities. This idea brought forth a new layer, pushing them to reach beyond their original scope. She envisioned a panel where real stories could create powerful connections, each personal narrative instilling a greater understanding for their peers. But what if they don't want to? She hesitated, thinking of the vulnerability required to share such histories. Tessa shrugged, her confidence seeming to solidify. It's worth asking. We can build trust by opening ourselves up too. We need to be real, not just faceless voices behind a podium. As they fleshed out details, Lily felt a breakthrough stir within. The responsibility shared between them forged a partnership that anchored her resolve, transforming apprehension into decisive action. It was not just their pasts they were forging ahead from, they were actively constructing a narrative that could foster development within their community, yet, looming above their budding ambitions was a shadow of uncertainty. What if they failed to resonate with their peers? What if Tessa's past behavior surfaced in the opinions of others, placing them both on shaky ground? The realization hit like a gust of wind. They would have to confront the opinions of their classmates head-on, where skepticism loomed large, ready to dissect their every move. As their meeting wrapped up, the discussion felt electric. As they stood to leave, confidence emanated from Tessa, but Lily felt a rising tide of anxiety in her chest. Time to put this all to the test, she muttered, trying to ward off the creeping doubt. Together, Tessa affirmed, a fierce glint in her eyes. Yet as they stepped into the sunlight, a sudden jolt of uncertainty came crashing back. Would the empathy they sought to promote push through the walls that had divided them for so long? I can feel it might get harder from here, Lily confessed as they walked toward the school. What if they turn on us? Tessa stopped, her expression shifting to reflect the gravity of their venture. Then we stand up stronger. If we can handle this, we can break through. In that moment, they both understood that standing against the currents of doubt was the defining test of their alliance. As they approached the school, an intense question loomed: were they truly prepared to shed their old roles and embrace the risk of being vulnerable? Little did they know that the echoes of their past challenges would soon become motivators, urging them onward, and as they stepped through the gates, uncertainty clawed at the edges of Lily's heart. Would they stand resilient against the looming scrutiny? Or would the doubts of home, peers, and circumstance bring them crashing down before they could ever take flight? When the final bell rang on Monday, it sent a ripple of energy coursing through the school. Lily felt a mixture of rebellion and apprehension brewing in her chest. Today was their first workshop, and anticipation weighed heavily on her. Would anyone show up? Would they be able to convey the urgency of their message? Each thought clashed against another, creating a cacophony in her mind as she pushed through the throng of students milling about, her heart pounding in rhythmic dissonance with their chatter. Tessa met her at the entrance, her presence a steady anchor. "Are you ready?" she asked, scanning the waves of students for any sign of approach. "Ready as I'll ever be," Lily replied, but the tremor in her voice belied any confidence she hoped to convey. As they navigated the halls, memories of those weary moments spent in the shadows of ridicule began to surface. The echoes of past bullying loomed ominously over their mission, yet Tessa's unwavering resolve was a crucial reminder that their journey together sought to confront that darkness. They reached the designated classroom, transformed from a sterile space into a welcoming environment scattered with cushions, colorful posters, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee, an inviting sanctuary birthed from their shared vision. The vibrancy seemed to pulse with hope. Still, the critical question lingered: how to fill this room with voices prepared to share? As they waited, the stark reality of vulnerability crept in. Lily had envisioned a dynamic forum where peers could recount their truths, yet the heavy silence threatened to crush her optimistic aspirations. Would students want to engage in a discussion that stripped away facades and revealed their inner struggles? Moments turned into uncomfortable minutes. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Tessa cleared her throat. "Let us just start talking. Even if it's just the two of us," she encouraged, her tone imbued with sincerity. Nodding, Lily took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll begin," she said softly. Being bullied is like swimming in a fog. You can't see the shore, and you're drowning in uncertainty. Each word floated into the air, an invocation to honesty that reverberated against the stillness. To her surprise, a small group trickled in after hearing snippets of their energetic exchange. At least a half-dozen hesitant faces braved the space, curiosity mixing with concern. Their expressions betrayed a longing for shared understanding, hinting at hidden stories, yet many remained rooted in uncertainty. Who here has felt the weight of unkind words? Tessa asked, breaking their introspective silence. One hand slowly rose, then another. As the participants began to share fragments of their own experiences, a profound shift took place in the room. Lily recognized the power of vulnerability transforming the atmosphere from anxiety-laden to electrically charged. It rippled outward, inviting empathy and understanding, as peers discovered connections between individual tales, weaving an intricate web of shared struggles. Instinctively, Lily's pulse surged with exhilaration. She had unearthed a raw power buried within the tales of their trauma and transformative language. Each story unveiled a layer of resilience slowly stitched together in the aftermath of pain. Laughter and tears mingled as connections blossomed unexpectedly during sentences interrupted by hesitations, but just as quickly as they embraced this newfound dynamic of honesty, unease surged. What would happen when their moment of authenticity was upended? Suddenly, a penetrating voice sliced through the delicate atmosphere. "What's with this nonsense?" A student shot a derisive glance at the circle, causing discomfort to spread like an uninvited chill. "Why are you sharing all this? It's weak." Lily felt a rush of anger mixed with vulnerability, a fusion of protective instinct for her fellow students and the anxiety of facing opposition. Here was the moment she had dreaded. Confrontation was unavoidable. Unfiltered fear clanged in her ears, but perhaps this was their testin. Opportunity to stand firm against dismissal. In that moment of decision, Tessa pulled Lily back slightly, her grip reaffirming their unity. "Because it's real," she said unwaveringly, her response ringing with collective defiance. "It's about confronting our truth. You can look away, but it won't erase the pain." As the breath hung in the air, all eyes turned to Lily, an unspoken chorus demanding the next step. Would she allow this confrontation to unsettle their quest for empathy? Or would she harness the support of those around her and push back? The weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders as she prepared to respond. Drawing strength from Tessa's grasp, Lily took a deep breath, locking eyes with their adversary, asking herself if she was ready to face this moment head-on. Now was not the time to retreat. What if we all embraced our weaknesses? Wouldn't that make us stronger in the end? The sentiment echoed around the room, but Lily knew this battle was more personal than confrontational. In that moment, she was confronted not only by external criticism but by her own unraveling fears, a wave crashing down, daring her to rise above. They were not just fighting for themselves but for everyone still too afraid to speak up. As the uncertain silence loomed, Lily's heart raced with imminent decision. Would this branch of confrontation lead towards their empowerment, or would it threaten to undo everything they had begun to forge together? Adrenaline coursed through her veins, primed for the next turn in their journey. And then, just as she opened her mouth to declare her thoughts, a singular realization struck her: this was only the first bout in a more significant conflict. The ground beneath her felt like a fragile web. Would they stand firm, or would caution tether them to despair? Lily's attention flickered toward the group, tension binding them together. She realized this moment was no ordinary confrontation, it was a watershed. Each person in the circle clasped powerful narratives brimming with unaddressed pain and hidden courage. "Look," she began, her voice gaining momentum, sharing isn't about weakness. "It's about acknowledging our truths so they don't control us. Vulnerability doesn't diminish us, it opens doors to resilience." The words flowed more freely now, emboldened by shared breaths and hesitant nods. The challenger, caught off guard, faltered. "But who even needs to hear these stories?" His contempt hung in the air, but now softened by uncertainty. Lily took a bold step forward, harnessing the energy of supportive gazes around her. They had ventured onto a precipice, and she stood at the edge, aware that her response was pivotal. What if this is how we take back control? By not letting the past define us. We are powerful together. And that's why we're here. An unexpected wave of courage rippled through the group. Murmurs of agreement surfaced, and another voice chimed in, yeah. It takes strength to face what hurts. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable surge of solidarity tumbled over the earlier disdain. Lily's heart hammered, feeling the collective pulse of empowerment. With renewed resolve, she turned back to the detractor. It's not nonsense. These are our lives, and they deserve to be heard. You might think it's weak, but that's just a mask over fear. She sensed the tension between herself and this boy evolving. Here was an opportunity, not merely to defend but to bridge understanding. You could try listening instead of judging. Her boldness surprised her. Would the challenge disrupt their flow, or would it fortify her newfound confidence? The boy faltered again, and Lily watched vulnerability crinkle in his brow amid the flickers of scorn. Maybe, he muttered. Why not join us? The suggestion slipped from her lips, a genuine invitation laden with hope for connection. We can share, and you can challenge us, ask questions, express your thoughts. We might actually learn from each other. Tessa glanced at Lily, a mix of pride and surprise in her eyes, acknowledging the powerful pivot Lily had taken. Silence draped the circle momentarily, leaving room for self-reflection. It was a space where vulnerability met bravery head-on. Slowly, the boy's demeanor softened, and he shifted uneasily, unveiling an awkwardness that suggested something deeper, perhaps a mask hiding his own struggles. Lily felt a shift within herself. This wasn't just about confronting criticism, it was opening a door to deeper conversations. The urge to probe beneath the surface beckoned her, igniting curiosity about what might lie hidden behind facades. I'll share my story, the boy finally relented. I guess everyone has something. His voice, although hesitant, held the weight of unearthing buried struggles. This unassuming confession transformed the session into something greater, a genuine connection where wounds could potentially heal. As he revealed his tale, Lily leaned back, filled with gratitude for this moment. A realization dawned on her: through confrontation, she was also learning to navigate her own scars, each brave revelation deepening her understanding of empathy. Around the room, others began to share, stories interwove, building a tapestry of experiences that blended fear and resilience. The atmosphere, charged not just with emotional weight, but also with the blossoming potential for healing. Several perspectives later, just as the workshop flowed into its rhythm, Lily noticed a familiar face lingering at the back, a girl who had walked into the session with stiff defiance. She met Lily's gaze with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, her posture tense as if on the verge of retreating again. This encounter sparked something inside Lily. The relentless need to extend understanding surged, signaling an adventure threading deeper than self-exploration. It became about embarking on a journey to untangle potential allyship. Amidst unspoken battles, Lily felt the pull of urgency within her own heart. This workshop was not merely a space for vulnerability, it was evolving into a potential haven for healing and reconnection. But as she leaned into the unfolding dialogue, a flicker of doubt crept in. Would this connection endure beyond today? Raising her voice slightly, she directed the next question to both the participants and herself: what happens beyond this moment? Can we continue what we've just started here? All eyes turned to her, anticipation suspended in the air. Would their emerging bonds sustain when they faced the world outside, where judgments lingered ready to surface again? The lingering shadows of past insecurities loomed larger than before. With her heart racing against uncertainty, Lily recognized they stood on the cusp of exploration and inquiry that promised greater revelations as they ventured together. Would they forth now, ready to unearth their shared destinies? Lily held her breath, the room vibrant with unspoken possibilities. The question had hung there, shimmering like a thread waiting to be pulled. What lay beyond this fragile connection they built? While hope flickered in her chest, the looming shadows of doubt began to creep in. What if everything they just shared was merely a fleeting moment, fading beneath the weight of the outside world? As she sought to gauge the thoughts of those gathered before her, she noticed the girl at the back still watching, her expression reluctant yet intrigued. That glance anchored Lily's spirit. It was as if that single moment anchored them all in a collective determination. Frozen despair turned into a spark igniting change. "Let us talk about what support means to us," Lily suggested, her voice cutting through the growing suspense. "How can we be there for each other when we step back into our lives?" There was a tension, not unlike the calm before a storm. The conversations they had begun here could either fizzle out or blossom into something truly transformative. "But we'll just go back to our old selves," the initially confrontational boy interjected, his tone challenging yet questioning. "How can we really change what happens when we leave?" His words hung in the air, sharp and cutting, yet layered with the same uncertainty Lily had been grappling with. Did they merely want to share pain, or did they long for transformation? She could sense the energy shifting again, and it invigorated her resolve. "We might not have all the answers right now, but the fact that we're standing together already makes a difference," she countered. Lily's thoughts raced. This scenario demanded action. Within her, a storm brewed, tweaking her innate fear into ferocity. "Maybe we could form a group. A place where we can find support, talk through issues, and share our victories, no matter how small." When she finished, a ripple of murmuring traveled through those present. The girl at the back twisted her fingers, uncertainty painted across her face, but a glimmer of consideration sparked in her eyes. Would the walls they built begin to crumble? They had been so entrenched in their heartbreak and banter that even the idea of sustained connection could feel revolutionary. The boy stared at her, his brows knitting together as if weighing her proposition. "What if we failed? What if we didn't?" Lily shot back, driven by an impulse she hadn't anticipated. No longer just defending herself, she found strength in her conviction for community. "This time, let us choose accountability. We owe it to ourselves to break the cycle. All our voices matter." The intensity coursing through her unspooled the threads of fear. What had once been debilitating nerves transformed into a passionate resolve. This was her moment of growth, changing not just her own narrative but potentially those around her. As they began to discuss logistics, framing what this group might look like, Lily's heart fluttered with burgeoning excitement. They crafted an outline, discussing meeting places and schedules, and began to draw tentative connections that seemed as fragile as the bonds just initiated. "Okay. Let us call ourselves the Unity Circle," proposed a girl with a fading scar on her arm. The name resonated, bringing a comfort to Lily that she hadn't anticipated. But just as hope surged, the boy's voice interrupted her thoughts again. "How do we know these stories won't just get out? What if we put ourselves out there and get hurt again?" Silence descended, thick and confrontational. Each of them held their breath. It seemed the air crackled with shared insecurities. Lily felt the magnitude of his words. Fear was a palpable entity, a specter that hovered, threatening to snatch away their aspirations. Her cheeks flushed with adrenaline. "We need to create rules. Safe words. Confidentiality." She raised her voice, pulled forward by a greater conviction rolling inside her like thunder. This wasn't just a workshop anymore, it was something alive, something magnetic that promised change, and in that moment, a deep resolve flickered within her. What if this was a moment to disrupt their repetitive cycles? If they could truly carve a path for connection and vulnerability, they might discover not just healing but empowerment that went far beyond themselves. As the conversation blossomed, Lily felt her heart steadying within chaos. They would take the plunge into the unknown together, and whatever awaited them would be faced as the circle. But as they dove deeper, flickers of anxiety loomed in the corners. What if this plan fell apart before they could test it? Lily pondered whether she would have the courage to navigate such complexities. The prospect of leading others towards vulnerability both thrilled and intimidated her. Would she be able to contain them? Would they trust her enough? As the meeting closed, she found herself still wrestling with fragile hope and anxiety, a tightrope between the promise of newfound strength and the fear of failure looming large. Would it even be possible to sustain this connection, infusing their stories with purpose and authenticity beyond the confines of four walls? And as they shared their plans, a lingering question spun in her mind: what would happen when their stories collided with the world beyond, where real challenges awaited? The adventure was just beginning, and with it, the stakes had never been higher. Days swiftly morphed into weeks as the Unity Circle blossomed, illuminating the once darkened hallways of Lily's school with its energy. Students who had once been shrouded in isolation and fear began to gather, and together they forged a safe haven where openness flourished. The workshops became an assembly of voices, their differences intertwining into a tapestry of shared humanity. Lily felt a surge of pride each time she observed the room transform from a stone-cold classroom into a sanctuary of connection. She had taken the lead, guiding discussions, fostering rapport, and igniting transformation through authenticity. At every meeting, the fear that had once cramped her spirit dissipated, replaced by clarity and purpose. This newfound sense of responsibility proved pivotal for Lily. She no longer merely existed in the shadows of bullying but rather wielded her experiences to influence change. The empowerment radiated from her, cascading through her peers as they exchanged stories, each raw confession carrying the essence of healing. One chilly afternoon, as students took turns sharing personal experiences, a familiar tension gripped the group. The boy who had initially scoffed at their cause now stepped forward, vulnerability etched across his features. He would share, she could see it in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steadier than either he or Lily had dared to expect. Those words hung in the air, serving as a bridge between their histories. The tension of contempt and understanding came together in a single breath. He recounted tales of his own insecurities, of feeling unheard and belittled, and within those tales, Lily recognized a universal truth. It was not merely her journey unfolding but a collective narrative where every individual was a stitch binding the fabric of their experience. "I wish I had someone to tell me vulnerabilities are strengths," he concluded, a hint of regret curling at the edges of his voice. Lily felt the group's silent nod, a wave of mutual acknowledgement spreading, shifting the atmosphere. This moment signified not only his recognition but all of theirs. The togetherness in vulnerability bred legitimacy in their purpose. Lily beamed as she watched a connection spark among her peers. They had assembled in defense of their stories, reclaiming not just their narratives but fueling collective strength. Recognizing the potential within each other, the agonizing pasts no longer weighed them down. Instead, they elevated one another. Realizing she had traversed a path far removed from her initial fears, Lily now geared toward planning the first public outreach beyond their safe harbor, an event that would connect their school with the community, Unity Day. With gusto, she approached Tessa after their meeting, excitement bubbling in her chest. "We can invite speakers, share our stories publicly, and even create a panel. Imagine how powerful it could be." Tessa, whose confidence had blossomed alongside Lily's, grinned widely, reflecting the wave of triumph they both felt. They spent the following weeks devising a strategy, inviting advocates and inspirational speakers who could share messages of resilience in the face of adversity. Something extraordinary had emerged from their struggles, constructing a platform that exemplified the importance of empathy in dispelling darkness. Finally, Unity Day arrived. The school auditorium shimmered with anticipation, an electric atmosphere punctuated by murmurs of curiosity. Lily stood backstage, gripping the speech she had prepared, her heartbeat echoing like a drum through her core. The audience before her was filled with familiar faces, those who had shared their heartaches and victories: students, teachers, parents, and community members. She sensed their collective spirit cheering her on. When she finally stepped into the light, she felt the shadows retreat. Clutching the podium, she scanned the crowd, her once timid heart swelling with a newfound strength. Lily began speaking, each word resonating with the fervor all those weeks had built. "This isn't just my story, it is ours, a testament to the power we hold when we stand together in vulnerability." As her voice soared, Lily spoke of unity, of embracing each other's stories as an antidote to pain. Each person in that room mattered, and they carried the potential to create change not just within their walls but far beyond the confines of the stage. After finishing her speech, a rush of applause enveloped her like a warm embrace, a rush of fruition that validated everything they had engaged in together. Weeks passed, and the conversations ignited within that auditorium reverberated through the hearts of her peers into their community. Lily received commendations and spontaneous notes of gratitude filled her locker. She became a catalyst for transformation. But the true fulfillment stemmed from within, an unshakable confidence that surged alongside recognition of who she had become. The complexities of her once isolated existence unfurled as she sat in her favorite cafe, reflecting on her journey with Tessa and the Unity Circle. No longer defined by mockery, but rather by authenticity and compassion, she had achieved more than resilience. She had conquered fear itself. As she sipped her coffee, laughter danced across the table. Tessa leaned in, her eyes brightening. "Looks like we're making waves." "Waves are just the beginning," Lily replied, a smile gracing her lips as she realized the journey was only continuing to evolve. Instead of shrinking, she had expanded both in stature and heart, embracing the bounteous possibility of the future. Lily Johnson had not just stood against bullying, she had emerged as a leader, changing the course of her narrative and uplifting her peers, proving that courage flourishes in vulnerability. Now, it's your turn to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a real difference. Comment below your reactions, stories, and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful journey of personal growth. Together, let us uplift others.